We're looking at staff roles and responsibilities, and the reason why we're looking at staff roles and responsibilities is because there's been a survey done, and the survey indicates that when we say staff roles and responsibilities, it's not clear to everybody what those things are. And you're going to see why in a minute. There's some fairly nebulous terms that we use that we just assume that everybody understands, and I think that's maybe a false assumption. So we're going to take a look at some of the chaplain's roles and responsibilities, and then we're going to pivot, and I really want to focus pretty hard on the 56 Mike roles and responsibilities, because I think that is a little clearer in the regulation well, there's some reasons for that, but it's a little more delineated than the chaplain one, which I think is intentionally vague. I don't think it's an oversight. I think that they left a lot of wiggle room because of our expertise in these specific areas. All right. So this is not in the regulation. This is not an AR 165-1 specifically. If I were going to write a regulation and I was going to do roles and responsibilities, I would line them out. Role 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You're not going to find it like that. So what I did is I extrapolated from the regulation some of these things, and really with this is a soft list, because what are the two roles of the chaplain? There's two roles. Number one we just covered, so that's easy. So that's a gimme for somebody.
Advisement.
Oh, good. You took the cheap one. You're higher ranking than you're supposed to take the more difficult one. Good.
Perform.
Advisement, and then what's the second role of the chaplain?
Perform. Religious support.
Yeah. Professional military religious leader is what the AR 165-1 says. Professional military religious leader. So those are your two roles. But I think that's not an exhaustive list by any means. That's like a super nebulous term. Professional military religious leader. I mean, just military is a fairly nebulous term, and then religious leader, oh my goodness, you just opened up Pandora's box. So we have a mixed group here. We have some majors with some experience and some seasoned captains, and then we have some folks that maybe don't have as much time in the saddle. So I want to kind of get feedback from all different kinds of people. Now, why do you think, let me take out one of the options. Besides the fact that our job has got a lot of facets to it, what's another reason that you think that they leave this so nebulous? Why do they leave this such a big, poorly defined term? Why is it so big? Religious military leader. Why do you think that is? All right. Part of that reason, I believe, is, look at myself, okay? I have mostly been in operational units. So if I come here and tell you what it's like to be in a staff, what's that going to look like? It's probably heavy on operations, advising the command about equipment that we might need to move to the railhead, how we might account for our equipment, the kind of equipment we're going to need in the theater of operation, where we're going to array our soldiers, these kinds of things. But what other kinds of units? What kind of units have you been in?
Trade-off.
Trade-off. I don't even know what that looks like. Is it larger than a goose? What's a trade-off? I don't know. What other kind of units? Like a MedCom unit would be different, TDA units, they're all kind of different. So when we talk about a commander's staff, that looks much different if we're talking about a trade-off or a medical unit or a force com unit. Those are all very different things. But we're going to try to get after it anyway. All right. I don't want to rehash, I don't want to walk the same ground or plow the same ground that we've already plowed. So what is the soldier and leader engagement? There's two sides of it. You got the advisement piece, but what else is what's a soldier leader engagement? Why did we change the name? I know I looked it on somebody's OER, but what's the other reason we changed the name? Okay.
soldiers not only recognize their inherent value, but also as we deploy and redeploy, one key leader will not be there for the whole time. So all of the people involved,
Yes.
are also they're all key.
Right.
Maybe the right.
So key leader engagement kind of indicates that it's one leader going to another leader. But when we say soldier and leader engagements, we're talking about soldiers and leaders interacting with players in the theater of operation. I don't think it's the exact definition, but it's really close. So soldiers and leaders interacting with the players on the battlefield or in the area of operation. So when we talk about interaction, yes, there's gathering information, but what else are we trying to do when we're doing soldier and leader engagements?
PR.
Yeah, we're influencing. We may be influencing them, showing them what we're about. And so that could be soldiers or leaders doing that. So that's another role that we play, soldier and leader engagements. I would argue the 56 mics also play that role, but I've had it down here under as chaplain.
And that's not just on the battlefield. I mean, in Garrison, I went to the pastor association meeting here in Fairfax, and where it's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's developing relationships to benefit both the community and our unit.
So it really helps to view the area of operation, also a nebulous term, right? Because where's our area of operation? Where's our theater? What is the environment in which we operate? I think it's not in here, but if I'm thinking about this too as a chaplain, right? I'm thinking, okay, I also have another audience. What's our audience here at Fort Wayne?
Soldiers, family members, DA civilians.
Soldiers, family members, civilians, right? That's an audience in our area of operation, isn't it? So those are people that we're supposed to be interacting with and trying to influence them with what we do. Again, this is I think one of the reasons they leave it broad, because this is for us to do that upper level thinking and think that through. Develop religious support products for plans and operations. Okay, this also looks really different. So if we're talking about a TOE unit, what are some plans and products that you're going to provide to your commander? CMRP, good. CMRP is a Command Master Religious Plan. Plan. Not program, plan. Command Master Religious Plan. Giving the commander kind of, and that's advisement. That falls under advisement. But it also, that is part of what we do. I don't think you covered that too much. But so Command Master Religious Plan lets him know what you're thinking, and then also helps him or her to kind of adjust your thinking, perhaps. Especially if you haven't done the staff integration piece to help adjust your thinking. Hopefully you've done that. We're going to talk about that in a minute. So CMRP, what's another religious support product that we produce for plans and operations?
Running estimate.
Staff estimate, running estimate, staff estimate. How many of y'all know what a staff estimate is? Okay, so if you haven't been in an operational unit, who would fault you for not knowing what a staff estimate is? The staff estimate has what?
Personnel.
Facts, assumptions, what else?
Constraints.
Constraints and resources, what else?
Limitations.
And limitations, okay. It is, when we say, so a staff estimate is a static thing, right? You're going to put that down as what we kind of start with. The running estimate gives you the idea that you're kind of, it's dynamic. Everything is changing. And so you're kind of changing with the battlefield, with the operation. Now, I think it would be hard if I were a chaplain who'd been in different kinds of units, and I ended up in an operational unit, to know what to put in my staff assessment, or my running my running estimate, staff estimate, running estimate. Here's, I think, a piece that we kind of do poorly as chaplains sometimes because someone teaches us something, so we have a product and we think it looks like this, and where do I get my template for a staff estimate?
Predecessor. Probably our predecessor, who we're replacing.
What's an even better place? Yes, 3. Your operations shop has what a staff estimate looks like. A lot of this stuff we're trying to recreate the wheel when all you really have to do is ask the question. Hey, and it's probably a good idea, especially if your predecessor left you something, because he may have gotten that from, Chaplain Coleman's Smart Book thing that he published online, and it's from 1934, when we were attacking the Moldavians or something. So it's you want so when we talk about staff integration, you want all your stuff to look like everybody else's stuff. Like branding. It should really fit in with what everybody else is doing. So really, if you're going into a new situation, when we're talking about integrating with the staff, we're not just talking about in the operations process, we're talking about you want to blend. And I don't mean you want to be bland. I'm not saying that you want to be mediocre. I'm saying you want your stuff to look like their stuff. All the branding should look the same. If they all have, if they decide not to use that formula that we talked about, if they decide to just deviate from it because who knows what, and make sure you do the deviation that they're doing because you're trying to fit in on your staff. You are a member of the commander's staff, and it really goes with what they're doing. So that's very important. So develop religious support products and plans and orders. Now here's where I'm kind of at a loss. What kinds of products do you develop in, let's say, a trade doctrine? What kind of products do you all develop for the commander as his staff?
I mean, really a lot of the same things that I did in a MTO unit, in a combat unit. You're providing a lot of the same information, status of personnel, upcoming religious support events, maybe something in there, upcoming training that you're providing or that's available on an installation or in an area of operations.
Okay.
A spiritual fitness thought is typically something somebody's going to include.
Okay. In an operational unit, let's say I'm having a prayer breakfast. I'm going to have a prayer breakfast. Commander's prayer breakfast. This is not like a soldier oriented. Commander's prayer breakfast. We're going to have everybody there, big dog and pony show. What products do I need? How do I integrate that into the cycle? Yes.
Well, you need to get with your S3, get on the training calendar and see where the white space is, and then you need to staff it with a Frago with S3 to send out down through the the chains to get it out to the commanders
Yeah.
and staff.
That's exactly right, and I think we'll hit that more when we get to the 56 mic part of it, because I think some of that I'm going to put some responsibility on y'all as 56 mics. Chaplains should be able to do it too, but I also want to put some responsibility on y'all that I think belongs to you. So there's some dude in your S3 shop that sits back there, and it may not be the AS3, it may be some guy or a person in a back room, darkened room. They've got an Excel spreadsheet in front of them, and you got to figure out who that guy is. So you can go back there and say, hey, where's some white space on the counter? Use the term white space on the counter. Where's some white space on the counter? And then he's got the little glasses, and he's like, well, I see that we have something here, over here. Can you pencil me in? Yeah, I got it. And he pencils it in. And lo and behold, you're kind of sort of on the calendar, right? So good, you need to make sure there's some white space on the calendar. Then when you have that white space, what do you do then?
Sir, ma'am.
Yeah, what products do you
Event, this date, this is what it would look like. Green light to go, or
Okay, so what products do I need? Okay, a con-op, that could be something that you need. You could use a con-op. What else? It depends on your unit too. They may want some other things too. So con-op, what else might they want for a product?
probably not a decision brief, but
Yeah,
you never know.
Could be a decision brief, depending on your unit. You want to also humanize it, so you want probably a flyer with proposed stuff on it. I mean, all this stuff is stuff to think about. So con-op, the flyer, you probably want a frago, or this is where it gets crazy because it's called different things everywhere you go. But a frago or a DTO, or what else do we call it? Frago, DTO.
Op order.
Yeah, so it's like whatever they use as their daily tasking order or their fragmentary tasking order. And why do you want to have a frago, a recommended frago for your 3 why do you want that? Why is that any good to me? Frago doesn't sound very exciting. Daily tasking order doesn't sound very exciting. Why do I want that?
Makes it efficient.
Yes. You talked about, someone said something about the commander it's his program, but I'm just the person that kind of runs his program. So who is tasking whom when it comes to an order? The commander. So if I've got a frago and it gets pushed out through the S3, is that more official or less official than just stapling flyers up all over the
Small official.
More official, right? The commander says we're having a prayer breakfast. So shall it be done, so shall it be said. Amen.
Yeah, you drive everything from.
Yes.
That's right.
Right. And it really becomes important when you get to the brigade level, because let's say I got Chaplain Smith, Chaplain Hackman, Chaplain Check, and Chaplain Parkhurst over here. Right? And I want them to ensure that the chapel is clean on a weekly basis, on a rotating basis, right? So I just say, hey guys, you know what? Could you guys make sure you clean the chapel and you clean on week 1, and could you clean on week 2 and week 3 for me, and week 4? Are you guys good with that? And they're all saying, sure, chaplain, we got you. What are my chances of that chapel actually being clean?
Not very good.
Yeah.
Flip a coin.
But if I go to the 3 and say, hey man, who does it? What's a frago? How do I put on a frago? Oh, sure, chaplain, here's a template. You guys got a template? Yes, they have a template. You get the template, you fill it out, and now I send it through the S3, and it goes out to the battalions from whom?
Commander.
The commander. So the commander is saying, Chaplain Smith, Chaplain Hackman, Chaplain Check, and Chaplain Parkhurst, you will clean the chapel on week 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now what are my chances of getting the chapel clean? Much higher, right? Still probably not that great. I mean, they are chaplains. Hopefully the 56 mic can keep them on task. So when we talk about staff functions, this is the kind of power that you need to bring to the party. You are a staff member, just like all the other staff members. What's the S1 have? What's the S1 have? People, right? People. What does the S2 have?
Intelligence.
Information. What does the S3 have?
Operations.
Yeah, everything, right? Operations, plans, operations, training.
Tasking.
What's the 4 have?
Resources.
Resources, all kinds of resources. Then we can go on from there, but we won't. 6 got communication. Those are the ones you pretty much deal with. There's more. What do you have? I hear crickets, but it's not because you don't have much. It's because you have so much. That's what I think. I think you kind of have a role in all. So you're super important, just as important as all those groups, but you're so ethereal. Not because you're heavenly, but just because nobody really understands what you do. But you need to understand what you do. You need to understand what you bring to the fight in that unit, right? That's being a staff officer. So you need to know what you have, and you need to be able to bring those products, plans, and orders. And you really need to think like that. Like if you notice, my slideshow up here is a little different than Tony's. You could look at those two slideshows and you could critique them. You could say, well, Chaplain Kuhlman, your product is not as good because it doesn't have actions, conditions, and standards. You should have that. It doesn't have any references, right? You could look at it objectively and say, your product is not as good as the other one. Or you could say, you actually changed the product and he didn't. Or you could say, you could critique it based on that. So you want your products to be very well developed. Like his was this morning, that's a good example of how he worked to develop this product. And when you saw that it was a well-developed product, you were more likely to be engaged by the material that's here. Okay? Because it looked professional. Did he have credibility because of that? Right? It added to his credibility. So that's good. Your product's very important. Management of supply and resources. We'll talk about that more with the 56 mic. Training of RS personnel. Now this is more at the brigade level, but what's your role as a battalion chaplain in the training of your 56 mic? And yourself, because you're one of the team. You've got to supervise yourself. What training do you need? Let's say we're in operation. What training do you need in operation? What 3 things do you have to do?
Shoot, move, communicate.
Okay, move, shoot, communicate, right? I have to be able to do those things. Move, shoot, communicate. If I'm going to move, I got to be trained on what? Load plan, those kind of things. Well, I also need a license, right? Does that require some training? Sure, right? Am I tracking that? Are we training that? Shoot. Okay, I don't shoot anything, but is my 56 mic trained on his individual weapon? Sometimes we think chaplain, we think, well, is he trained to set up the chapel correctly? Well, that's important. But we also are thinking these other things. Is it your responsibility as a chaplain to make sure that your 56 mic is trained on his individual weapon, his or her individual weapon? Right? It is. Even though you don't shoot a weapon, it's important that they shoot a weapon. So you need to know that. When did they last qualify? Are they trained? When it comes to their protective gear, are they trained in all their, it's not MOP anymore, what is it? Yeah, are they trained in all their soldier tasks? You should be tracking that. You need to know that because when you go to the field let's say you go to JRTC or NTC, you need to know what they're training because you got to be prepared. If you're going to theater operation, you definitely have to know that. So these are all important things you've got to be tracking and communicating. How important is it for the chaplain to communicate? I mean, he's rambling along the battlefield. I've done it plenty of times without having radio set up. You need to make sure that they're trained on that equipment and that you're trained on that equipment so you can use all the encryption encryption equipment and the communication equipment that goes with it so that you can actually communicate on the battlefield. These are all things that's all part of being a staff officer. Making sure that they're trained, making sure that you're trained and you're ready to do these kind of things. Okay, now let's get into my question mark. These are not regulations, there's no question marks for regulations. We talked about integration with the staff. I think we beat that horse a little bit. MDMP, what's MDMP?
Military decision.
Military decision-making process. How much do you get into the planning?
We provide a religious policy schedule of beginnings, so people know what they're planning, so we can avoid certain dates if that is their prerogative. If they don't want to have things on religious holidays, we advise about the impact it will have. Then they begin the process, we follow along, putting it in place.
Okay, so some external advisement that impacts the operation. Well, you talked about religious, oh, okay, your religious holidays and stuff. Okay, so you're talking about internal
Unit soldiers.
for the unit soldiers.
The unit soldiers, and it would be external, a little bit in the religious area. I mean, we're coming up on Idel and or whatever, it's how I pronounce it, on 31st of July. We're in a Muslim country that's going to be affecting operations plans. So that'd be part of the NDP process as well, external.
Okay, so advisement is a big part of MVP. Now here's where it gets squishy, and I think why it's squishy. Because you have to decide how to skin that cat. If you're here with Peter, I'm really sorry. You have to decide how that works. You have to decide how much you want to get involved in that. Just because they say, well, all the staff is going to be there, does that mean you have to be there?
No, but a lot of times your 3 or your XO will go, hey, chaplain, you don't really need to be there. But then you miss out on all of the information, all of the planning, all of the knowing of what is going on.
So this is why it's squishy. Because you have to consider these things. You have to look at your time schedule, you have to look at the things you have to do, and you have to say to yourself, is this something I need to be at? And make the call. Because for every choice you make, you're excluding other choices, obviously. So you have to make that call. In a brigade, it's probably a bunch of lieutenants figuring out the operation. And then they're going to talk with the staff, like the captains, majors. They're going to talk with them about it later. If that's the case, you may decide not to be there for that MDME planning session. If it's all the movers and shakers are there, you may decide to be part of it. But it's not a one-size-fits-all proposition. The operations process, you need to be involved with it to the degree that it affects what you're doing. This is the problem I think I see. This is an experienced thing. You can chalk this up to like, I don't believe you or I do. But what I see is chaplains fall on one side or the other. You've got the guy that's super operations oriented that says, I'm going to like totally dive into it. He doesn't like people. So he doesn't go down to the motor pool. He's so involved in the operations process. Then you got the other chaplain. It's like, he's got daisies behind his ear. He's super happy to be there, or she, I don't know. And he or she says, well, all that operation stuff is for you guys. I'm going to go talk to the soldiers in the motor pool. Right. Which one of those answers is right? Neither one of them, right? Because they're both extreme. Yes.
This kind of goes back to what I was saying in the earlier module about wisdom, and as well as the example I gave was actually during MDNP in the talk when the people went because there's a time, of course, past mission analysis that some people might think, well, the chaplain doesn't have a product. You can go if you want. See you later, and there you have a part in each part. It's just because you don't have a do out doesn't mean you shouldn't be there. This is where we become the advisor. This is where we do a staff role, because it helps to bring that part of wisdom to the fight to help them be really what used to be called a lot as a force multiplier, and I think still is. We still need to be that there. Maybe I don't help with the COAs. Maybe I will. Maybe I'm part of it will directly impact they don't understand. They may not have read the RIA that I developed. But maybe it doesn't attain to that, but the way they're going about their process and their functions to develop those COAs for the commander, it's toxic. So we always have something to put in there. It doesn't mean there always will be some level of toxicity, but that we're there to help them. And that's why we have a part in each part of MDNP.
Should definitely be part of your calculation for sure. And that also kind of dovetails into the next part. What is your role as a pastor? You're a pastor and a commander, hopefully, if you do it right. But what's your role as a pastor to the staff? What's your role to bond with the staff? These have to be part of your equation. Is this something I need to be at? Not because, like if it's, we're going to do this command post exercise at 3 in the morning, right? And it's going to involve all the staff. Well, what's good about you being part of it besides the fact that, what's good about you being part of it besides the obvious operations implications? Yes?
I'd say just your presence. I mean,
Yeah.
when you don't show up to those types of things, I doubt at 3 in the morning there's a lot of staff members that want to be there. And so when the chaplain's there, it's like, well, at least he's here, and it makes the suck a little bit more bearable.
Yeah,
And you're
AR
right.
56-nothing says that there's a term in there, terminology, AR 56-17 says, there's a terminology in there, shared suck. Right? If you've read that AR, you know that's there. It's shared suck. Shared suck is not in some of these more known standards, but very important. Every seasoned chaplain knows about shared suck. What is shared suck?
You cared enough to show up and go through it with us.
Yeah. If it sucked for us and it sucked for the chaplain, he must be one of us. You're one of us, chaplain, because you were there at 3 o'clock in the morning and it was like negative 18 below zero, and you were there with us. So that's very important. Certainly should write that down. Shared suck, very important. Not always the answer. There may be other places you need to be, but sometimes that makes sense. We talked about staff estimates. Rehearsals. What's a rehearsal? Ballet?
Yes.
That was really good.
Thanks. Trying to pirouette in combat boots is not great. So the class isn't that great, but the entertainment value is awesome. You should be at all rehearsals. No. What part of the operation is your area? Sustainment, right? So what rehearsal should you definitely be at?
The sustainment.
The sustainment rehearsal. You can go to other rehearsals as well, but okay, the strikers are going to come in from the left, and okay, that's all great. But you definitely, if you're going to be at one of them, you definitely need to show up at the sustainment rehearsal because you are sustainment. So make sure you're at the sustainment rehearsal. But rehearsals are another great place for bonding and things of that nature.
Well, I
as
was
well.
going to say, to show up to those rock drills and rehearsals that they're doing, if it's a mission rock drill, you know where every one of your companies are and what they're going to be doing during a sustained operation.
Yeah.
So it becomes intelligence for you. How do I visit these individuals? How do I minister to them? Where might casualties be, or where might somebody get legitimately hurt? If it's just training,
Right. Yeah. Good point.
This might break out what I mean when I said wisdom. And you put it up there, sir, kind of nicely with the bullets of 10 and 12, which is when you're trying to pastor a bomb to staff and you're going to be there at rehearsals, is something that the commander actually expects of you to be their staff person, which is to say, be well experienced. If you're not well experienced, be well read. If you can't just be well read, also be well connected. And then finally, not just being well connected, be well versed. To be well connected and versed, to be well read, and to be well, experienced, you have to go to these things. You have to be a part of that.
And when you're seasoned like that, you're kind of part of the tribe. You fit in. You're not an outsider,
That's right.
We're going to do this. Well, that sounds great. I think that'd be awesome. You don't want to be that chaplain, right? You want to be the chaplain that's like, yeah, I totally get it. I get the terminology. I'm awesome. And this is not just chaplains, it's 56 mics as well. So these are all things to consider. Everything here with a question mark on it came from my head. So it's not in regulation. These other things I kind of extrapolated, but I think there are things that you should think about, and there are probably things that you need to put in your own regulation that you have going up here in your industry, you'll kind of internalize some of that and just let that be who you are, even though it's not written down anywhere. Now, this one is written down in the regulation. It's very specific, and I think it's interesting because I think a lot of it we think of as the chaplain's responsibility, when in fact, if the 56 Mike steps up to the plate, what my job is to do what's my responsibility, so the officers appointed over me don't have to do my job, right? So the more, as me, when I was an NCO, many years ago, when our ranks were made of rocks, my thought was, well, I'm going to take as much of the job that I can take and take as much initiative as I can take until they tell me to stop. Because I had a low density MOS too, and it was like social workers and psychiatrists and stuff. They don't know anything about all this stuff. So I'm going to take as much as I can and let them tell me to stop. I'm going to learn about the operations process. I'm going to learn about these things so that I can take responsibility, because then that makes me more professional, and also you can't get rid of me because I'm awesome. That's not in the regulation either. So you need to be, number one rule of the 56 Mike, you need to, these are not in any order, they're just from the regulation. Again, they're not written down either. They're kind of, it's like someone took all the stuff and just threw it in a pot and then just put numbers on the side. Because some of them you had to cut out different pieces, which was weird. So you can take my list and keep it if you like to. It is from the regulation. Enlisted SME, subject matter expert on religious operations. You're not an expert necessarily on religion, but you are an expert on religious operations. So how do you become an expert? So I just take religious off there first of all. I don't know why it's just religious support. If you're going to be an expert in religious support operations, you also need to be an expert in what?
Operations.
Operations. How many of y'all are experts in operations? Nobody should raise their hand, because I'm sure they're going to raise my hand. How do you become an expert in operations? Look, the chaplain's
integrating.
The chaplain doesn't know about this kind of stuff. Who finds out what the template is for the S3 in a perfect world? Now, the chaplain can, but who could do that too? Who makes the crazy? Well, be careful with my language here. Who makes the crazy old plans? Who makes the crazy plans? The officers, right? Who carries out the crazy plans? Enlisted, right? Mine is not to reason why. Mine is just to do or die. You execute. The chaplain comes up with some great thing. Well, you know, our special Smith, what we really ought to do is this. And you're like, okay, well, let me see if I can bring that and kind of focus that, right? You need to know operations. How do you know operations? How do you learn operations? Now, if you're in garrison, it's a little more difficult, but if you're in operational unit, how do you learn operations?
Get in there.
What's that?
Get in there.
Get in where? Yeah, get in there. I like that. Get in where?
The area, ask questions.
Okay, so maybe your 3-shop or your operations center, whatever you have in your unit that does operations, that cell, the operations cell, you want to get in there and get your hands dirty. You may have to ask your chaplain, hey, I want to go work in with operations a little bit, kind of learn what they do. If it's a good chaplain, he or she will say, yeah, go ahead. Now, as a chaplain, I'm not saying to give your people away, but it's a good idea to get your 56 Mike into the 3-shop or into your operations cell so that they can be your eyes and ears on how to do some of this stuff. And tell them what you want to get smart on. Hey, I want to get, Gunther, I want to get smart on, how we do fragos or DTO. What do y'all use for daily operation order? Casting order or the TOs? What is it? Fragos? Okay, figures. Striker. So go figure out, if we want to put out a frago, how do we do that? That's a good thing for a chaplain to ask. is 56 Mike. Go figure out how we do that. Hey, go get me a template for staff estimate so we can look like everybody else. But as a 56 Mike, you should also be thinking, what kind of things do I need to know about the operations process? Maybe it's, even though it's mostly officers and they're lieutenants and stuff, maybe it's a sergeant's job to go and hang out in the NTMP when they're making those initial plans and things. To get in with the planning cell and you be the person that kind of learns about that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Directly support religious operations. There's not a lot to say about that. Advise the command team on your training and manning and growth and development. Now, this is more of an NCO skill, so that means if you're E4 and below, you just tune out, right?
Negative.
Why not? This is an up-or-out organization. You know that? It's an up-or-out organization. You're going to be looking in the mirror one day, and you're going to see a sergeant's rank on your chest. God help you if what's up here doesn't match what's on here, or what's in here doesn't match what's on here. Because that needs to be what you're about like now. If you want to get promoted to sergeant, you need to have the potential to be a sergeant, which means you need to be learning about that today. If what's in here and what's up here doesn't match what's on here, you got no respect from anybody. They're going to be the same thing as the chaplain. 56 Mike just go stand over there because this is big boy and girl stuff. You just stand over there. You want to be marginalized like that? I wouldn't want to be. So you need to know it. So you should be doing this. So if you're in a battalion, whose training do you need to know about? We already said who the chaplain needs to know about. Who do you need to know about? The same people. Do you realize that you're what makes a unit ministry team a team? Because otherwise it would just be the chaplain. You make the team a team. You should know that stuff. The chaplain should say, you know what I really like to do is I would like to get our training down on a slide. Sir, already done. Here it is. That's stuff that you can think about. Nobody said that you can't do that. Nobody said that you can't be driving that process. A lot of times I think because chaplains have such strong personalities a lot of times that you kind of shy back from that. Or, you make it slap down a couple times. That doesn't mean you don't keep rising up and like, okay, so I get it, you want me away from here, but I'm either going to take that or I don't have to take that. But you can't keep me out of doing some of these things. If you do it right, then they don't have to come back behind you and fix it. Or if you do it wrong even, at least they'll have something to fix. So, but that should be your goal, is to start to understand the training of your unit, even at the battalion level. I would say even at the battalion level, because you're leading two people. You're leading yourself, and hopefully in some areas, you're leading your chaplain. Just because you don't wear captain's bars doesn't mean you can't lead yourself. You can lead right 360, we talk about. You can lead 360. So in some of these areas, you're going to provide staff guidance and training. That's super, super nebulous. What might that look like? I'm just going to leave that open to you. What could that look like? It doesn't even say what they're supposed to train them on. What kind of things could you provide staff guidance and training on as an NCO, religious affairs specialist, religious affairs non-commissioned officer?
Brigade level training requirements for UMTs and garrison and/or / division UMT training requirements.
Okay, training requirements, letting them know about that. Can you advise on some of the things that the chaplain advises on? Can you understand religious, does it have to be a chaplain that understands various religious requirements? Do you have to have like something about being a chaplain? No, nothing, right? The chaplain doesn't have to know that. Can you objectively look at values and ethics and advise on those kinds of things? Because we already said it didn't come from Scripture necessarily, which is your chaplain's area of expertise. Okay. But it comes from other things, right? I mean, values, our founding documents, what we're about as a nation, right? Those things are published. So you can learn those things as well. You can provide those kind of things. I must have missed it. Oh no. I jumped over staff assistance visits. That's an NCO level. What's a staff assistance visit? Do you do those? Yes.
So a staff assistant is like, at a brigade level is, me going down to those battalion 56 mics or, those battalion chaplains and ensure that, they're doing all their tasks and they're set up for success,
I like that. Set up for success. So it's not like it does talk about inspections. I didn't put it up there, but really I think he's got at the heart of what you're trying to do. Your job as the NCO, as the brigade level person or the next higher level, whatever that may be, or here in the office it would be like, obviously it's a little different in the RSO. You got Staff Sergeant Hackman, and then he's got people that run different chapels or different things. The job is to go down there and help them to be better at what they do. You're not like a teacher giving them a grade. You really are setting it up so you can get a good grade. If all your constituents, because they're not really, they're subordinates in the military sense of the term, but they constitute your unit ministry team. So if all your constituents are awesome, who else is awesome? You, right? If you got them all awesome, that means you're awesome. So you want to be able to provide those staff guides and training. You should be, as an NCO, you should be looking, so they have their own internal training plans, but you should have your training plans as well, right? It's layered and nested. So you have priorities for your brigade or your office or your cell, and then your constituents, their priorities, training, and things like that need to be nested up into yours, right? They should be getting guidance from you. And where do you get that from? How do you know what you're supposed to do? It comes from your chaplain, right? And it comes from the commander, right? His priorities, her priorities, his priorities, their goals, right? Those are the things that should be your priorities. So the commander, he or she will say, I want families to be taken care of. Okay, how do we provide religious support so that families are taken care of, right? That's a nested part. Families are taken care of. That's his or her goals. So you provide religious support, families are taken care of. See how that works? And that's where it comes from. So, plan, resource, supervise, and conduct 56 mic training. We've talked about that, or we just talked about that. And then monitor and recommend 56 mic assignment utilization. This is another area where you're going to get tons of pushback and you're going to have to prevail. You're going to impose your will on the process to make sure that things happen, right? And this, I think when I was at the brigade level, this was something that I think was a real success for us as a team, was that we made sure that people got assigned and used in the proper fashion. I'll give you an example without giving away the personality of the person in charge. We had one chaplain who was really like the patriarch type figure in their UMT, and he's going to show this young man all these things about carpentry and helping out on deployment, and he's going to make a man of him, right? Which, he was a self-starting guy. He was a good kid. He didn't need all that stuff. He was a good soldier. He didn't need all that. And he provided him so much feedback and so many things, and he called him names. I mean, he was just a real tough chaplain. And what do you think happened to that soldier who was like hard charging, takes initiative, good guy? Yeah, he just got squished, and he became smaller and smaller. It was really the chaplain that was a small guy, but the soldier became smaller and smaller. I said, kids, I'm 55 years old, guys. So the soldier became smaller and smaller, right? Then we had another unit team, same theater of operation. Laissez-faire chaplain. You all know what laissez-faire is? hey, 56 Mike, just go over there and do whatever 56 Mikes do. But he had a chaplain assistant, or he had a 56 Mike that was a knucklehead. You know what a knucklehead is? That's back from when I was in the Army. Oh, I'm still in the Army. It is a knucklehead. He just didn't get it. He needed direct supervision. He needed hands-on, not really hands-on, but just loving hands-on, attention and love and care. And maybe a few of those yelling sessions wouldn't have been too bad. But he worked for the laissez-faire chaplain. So what did my 56 Mike, all wise, all knowing 56 Mike, what did she do? Yeah, she said, hey, I've got a mismatch. She switched them. She put the guy that needed more attention and love and care and nurturing and hands-on with the guy that was giving it, or kind of calmed him down a little bit. Put him with him, and then we put the one that needed the care and nurturing and kind of broad, like, hey, go do what you want to do, with the other guy. You see what a difference that makes? That's huge. So you see those things. If you have a chaplain that, okay, but you're mostly concerned about chaplain. You're mostly concerned about religious affairs specialists. We'll leave it there. So that's your job as an NCO, is to do that. To the degree that you can. Sometimes you cut across phase lines, especially up here in this crazy neck of the woods. You go get USARAC and Garrison and this thing and that thing. You can't move the pieces around as easily. But to the degree that you can, that's part of your job, is to influence that process. If you see somebody that really has an area that they are good in and they need to go to, you need to make an assessment and do that. So that's your role. Are you going to get some pushback for doing some of that? I would assume so. I would assume so. But it still gives it to you in the regulation. Now, it doesn't come, you don't do this by just showing the regulation. Well, it says here I'm supposed to do this. What are they going to say? That comes from the way that you handle it. Right? Those skills and abilities that you have to finesse that and to make that happen. So whose roles are more delineated? Whose roles are more well delineated? Chaplain or 56 Mike? 56 Mike for sure, by yards, right? Not by inches. So who's going to be a mover and shaker on that team? Is it going to be the chaplain? Hopefully so. They always are. Hopefully you don't have an absentee chaplain. Who's the one that's making things happen? Who's the one that's making sure that team's successful? Who's the one that's the team member that's pushing a lot of that? It's you. It's you, the 56 Mike. I don't think we think about that a lot of times because we're so used to, we have a very Roman system with all the top-down hierarchy stuff, but we're more like, the Greeks or something, without weird stuff. But, so try to get away from that. Respect your chaplain. Yeah, stand at attention when the person walks in the room, do all the things you're supposed to do, but at the same time, understand that it may be your role sometimes to help to guide the chaplain and to think in different ways, tactfully and in ways that are respectful. But really, NCOs take that responsibility. They're not given that responsibility. And they take that initiative. They're not given the... Don't wait for someone to tell you, all right, PFC Parkhurst, now you can take some initiative. No, too late. Chaplain Kuhlman, I'm going to take this initiative and do this. With the understanding that they can say, no, I don't really want you to do that. Stand down with you. That's all right. That's fine. That's kind of the rules of engagement. But, and I'm kind of speaking outside my lane, but would you agree with some of that, Sergeant Hackman? You want to add something on that?
I mean, yeah, I think a lot of times, especially in newer teams, down to the battalion level, chaplain comes in the Army with a degree, higher education, than an 18-year-old private. And I think a lot of times that, it does get swamped up by the chaplain, but I think there's a lot of stuff that the chaplain does that's, 56 Mike related. And, I think knowing this and having the chaplains know this is, super important when it comes to, education, development of that 56 mic so they can start taking on more responsibility, make them a better NCO when they reach those levels. So,
When would you recommend a soldier start seeing themselves as an NCO?
E1.
Y'all heard what he said? So anybody here over E1? Okay. You got 4 of them, man. Should be like 4 times the NCO. So just as a, you know, and then chaplains, leave some space for your 56 mic. Don't just, that threatens me because that's my area. Calm down, Karen. Just let it happen. It's a beautiful thing, right? It's a beautiful thing. You know, and then if they fail, you know, you can lovingly, you know, adjust for fire and like, hey man, like that email you sent out, let's not do that anymore, right? But do that in a way that's, you know, balanced and forward. And kind of like we talked about with the SAVs. You know, you're not there to like crush them. You're there to uplift them and to help them to become the NCO that you could, you know, the better NCO than you could even dream about. That's your job, is to help empower them. If you're both doing that, the 56 mic is striving to be the best and taking initiative in things, and the chaplain is open to that and listening, you're going to have a great team. You're going to have a great team. It will be so much better than anything you've seen so far. And it's in your hands. It's in your hands. So those are the roles and responsibilities of the chaplain and the religious affairs specialists. What are your questions about roles and responsibilities of chaplain 56 mic? What are your questions about life in general? No, that's not. All right. Yes, sir.
I just have a comment. I missed a good portion of your sentence.
Yes.
Apologies. When I started out with about writing chaplain, I looked at my chaplain assistant, back when they were chaplain assistants, said, I trust you more than anyone else. Even if you tell me I'm working too much and I need to go back out, I will do it. You're a tactician, if you come under fire or anything like that, I trust you. And that helps bring us up to speed and make really quickly. The other thing that I realized is that chaplain assistant, was the person, like I once was, has the ability to reach into people's lives in a way that I don't have the right to, because I'm on the other side.
Yeah.
Or I'm a religious person. And so trusting their feedback, input, and direction, and not minimizing it or dismissing it, talk about us.
Yeah.
And both people on the same team, I mean, your peers in ministry, you have different roles and responsibilities.
Yeah, and they don't have a set template for 56 mic. Because, you know, somebody comes to you, they've got some good education, some good home training, things are good. Somebody comes to you just out of high school and, you know, they're a bank robber, you might have to use a different approach with those two folks. And you get both. You get both. You have to gauge that. If you're just coming at it like, well, just machine go. Because you don't even know where he or her is coming from. It's very important. Other questions? Comments? Accusations? Okay, we're good? Derek?
Talk about empowering the mics. I had my last brigade, I had an assistant that she had a great idea for a brown bag lunch thing and bring in different speakers from outside, just, you know, share their heart and talk questions. So much so that it had visibility with a Korea 8th Army commander. She ran into the gym. He came as one of the speakers. She got a 2-star coming into this brown bag lunch that I say UMT running the chaplain assistant did. She did all the planning. She did all the work. She said, sir, just do this for me, you know, open up and maybe close us out. And that makes the whole UMT look good. And then the UMT makes the commander looks good, makes the unit look good because, you know, the 8th Army commander is saying, hey, this is a great program. So empower your UMT, your assistants is a good thing to do.